So one session to go before lunch. I hope you enjoyed the Future 50 combinations. Yeah? So let's integrate them more in our daily diet. So where are we? So we started this morning with the starting point that innovative flavor line extensions increase brand equity and sales. But we have to understand the product. So the session downstairs was all about understanding the product, the chemistry, and the pairings. Now we're going to shift to a second part, and it's understanding your consumer. And if you look at how consumers sometimes try to understand, food companies try to understand their consumers, sometimes they make 20 million bets on the feedback of 20 people. There's a quote from a VP from Campbell. So yeah, then it's really difficult to make an accurate prediction on what product will be a success in the market, yes or no. So I will hand the word to Thomas, who will talk about how we mine those consumer behavior.
Exactly. Thanks, Bernard, for the introduction. Indeed, as Bernard mentioned, I will be talking about specifically text processing as food pairing. But what this does is this allows you to understand what the content of online social media or recipe entails. Right, so broad view first. So from food pairing on, we have various sources that deliver us insight in what people eat, when people eat it, how they eat it, with whom they eat it, all those sorts of things. And that mainly comes from recipes and a bunch of social media data. Can be from all over the globe, doesn't matter. The more local your insights are, the more accurate they're gonna be. Makes sense. Right, so what we do? We gather the data, we gather the social media posts, hundreds of millions, billions of social media posts, along with millions and millions of recipes, but they're just documents. They don't do anything. We can't tell a machine gain insights from that. We first have to analyze and structure the data that is contained in those documents. And how we do that? Well, I'm going to try to explain it, how we do it, by taking the human example. So this is my lovely wife, Helene. We got married last summer. And I asked Helene to do a little experiment with me, and I showed her this recipe. So I showed her the recipe for fricky omelette with olives and feta, along with those ingredients. And I just said to her, okay, tell me, what do you see? What do you interpret? What do you think about this? And what she does and how she does this is actually quite interesting. So what she does is she reads it. She reads the recipe. But what she actually does is she sees some explicit information and she sees some implicit information. So she explicitly sees that there's feta in there, that there's Kalamata olives in there, spring onions in there. She recognizes those ingredients. She has seen them before, so she can pinpoint to me, those are the ingredients. But for example, fricky, she had never seen that before. She didn't know that an ingredient. But still, she's very smart, she was able to infer that fricky is probably an ingredient in this sentence. Because after a sentence like 1.5 of half a cup of cooked something something, that something something is often going to be an ingredient. So that's for the explicit part. So she recognizes some things, she infers some things. But then I asked her as well, what do you think about this recipe? What type of recipe is this, according to you? And again, she answered quite correctly. She's very, very smart. That it's more like a Mediterranean dish, and it's probably going to be a main dish. And although this information is not explicitly mentioned in the text anywhere, she's still able to determine this because in her experience as a person over the years, many years, she has seen a lot of Mediterranean dishes. We go out to lunch and dinner often, of course. And she's able to infer, okay, I would link this rather to a Mediterranean type dish than, for example, an Eastern Asian dish, based on my personal experience. So with this in mind, this is exactly how we at Foodpairing train our machines to do this as well. So we have the efficient learners, we have the people who have tons of experience, who get learned by their parents and who get taught things right away, we used those people to tag ingredients and tag recipes along a certain taxonomy. And with that, they come up with thousands, tens of thousands of examples. And using those examples, we can then train our inefficient learners, our machine learning algorithms here at Foodpairing, to do exactly the same. Now, why would you want to do that? Scale. So we can ask an efficient learner, like Bernard, he knows everything about recipes and cuisines there is to know. So we can ask Bernard for months and months to come, okay, Bernard, tag all the ingredients you know, tag all the recipes you know, say which dish type it is, regionality it is, and he's going to do it perfectly and very successfully, but that doesn't scale. We need something that can do this for hundreds of millions of posts and millions of recipes instantly. So we use the perfect knowledge from the perfect learners to train really clever machine learning algorithms who can then do that for us. I hope I'm making sense a little bit. Right. Recipes are really cool. Social media, that's a bit more difficult, of course. I took probably one of the cleanest social media posts we have here at Foodpairing. That's someone who is really fond of chocolate ice cream, apparently on the hashtags that he used, just to show that how they present information in a recipe that's really structured, you know? We just saw an example. How they present information in a social media post like that, that's super messy. So that adds an extra layer of difficulty and intelligence that we have to add to our machine learning algorithms to be able to say that chocolate ice cream sandwich is not one word, though it's delicious. It's actually various components. That this emoji, that actually means something. That even though people use slang and misspell words, that actually means something. Otherwise, you're going to lose a lot of information. Next to text, of course, we're also playing around with image recognition at Foodpairing as well. Because even though this person was quite verbose about his social media post and the content of his social media post, a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are just going to say like, lolo, 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 best day ever, chilling with some ice creams. But in the picture, there's going to be like really nice information. That's the weird thing about Instagram right now. People are super careful about what's in the picture and it's presented in a perfect way, but they just talk trash and garbage in the text that they add. So it's really interesting to capture all of the information in there, which is text and image. Now, to see how efficient of learners you guys are, we've added a little quiz. So I have each time a recipe with a title, some ingredients, and I present to you each time 4 options about a certain dish type or course type. So for the first one, we have shaved asparagus and gorgonzola pizza with a number of ingredients, and you guys have to guess if it's more Western Europe cuisine, Italian cuisine, Turkish cuisine, or UK cuisine. Super difficult. Pizza. Now, everybody knows this, of course. It's just Italian cuisine. So we ran this through our classifier, through our machine learning algorithms here at Foodpairing, and we see that, of course, because of the perfect information that knowledgeable people like Bernard, like other people who know stuff about recipes have tagged it, the algorithm has successfully picked up the little clues in there and can successfully now tag this, but yeah, in like nanosecond or millisecond speed. Second one, a bit more tricky. We have coconut rice with some eschalots, cucumber, ginger, lemongrass, pandanus, vegetable oil, jasmine rice, ikan bilis, coconut cream in there. And you guys have to guess if it's, I'm going to read it because I think not everybody can see it, if this dish is rather Eastern Asian, so Korean, Japanese, if it's more Southeast Asian, so Thai, Vietnamese cuisine. I already see some first discussions. If it's more Central Asian, so China, Taiwan. Or if it's more like from the islands in Asia, so Bali, Indonesia. Okay, so let's get some hands up. Who thinks it's Eastern Asian? Ooh, no takers. Who thinks it's Island Asia? Ooh, quite a few. All right. Who thinks it's Southeast Asian? Yeah, I think it's 50-50. So who thinks it's Central Asian? Nobody. Okay, so it's kind of balanced between Southeast and Island Asia, but it's in fact Southeast Asian. Apparently, so this was all very well, and we have probably some examples of this going into the algorithm. But the nice thing is, and we're going to see an example in a second, that we can use the algorithm that we have trained, the machine learning algorithm, to open the black box a little bit and dig into the nitty-gritty details and see why it thinks it's Southeast Asian. And we're going to see an example of that in a second. I'm already going to spoil it a little bit. It's apparently ikan bilis and pandanis who contribute largely to the fact that it's Southeast Asian. For those of you who don't know it, I didn't know either, I had to look it up. Ikan bilis is a type of dried anchovy, apparently. Looked really funny, but yeah. And just as an example how this can switch really easily, we have a strawberry and mascarpone granita, which is either a sorbet, an ice cream, a viennoiserie, or a mousse. Not that hard, of course, it's a sorbet, it's a granita, we all know this. But just by changing like 2 words, like by changing the word granita to the word sundae, and the ingredient water to the ingredient milk, we can try to see if the algorithm actually switches from a sorbet to something else. And indeed it does. So just by changing little artifacts in the title or in the ingredients, the classifier completely flips over and thinks it's ice cream and frozen desserts now, which is in fact correct, it's a sundae. So opening the box a little bit, I have added the coconut rice example here and the sundae example here. And I have asked the algorithm, I just asked it, but I looked into the algorithm and I have tagged the words that contribute to that decision in green and the words that dissuade it from going for that class in red. So the greener, the more confident it is because of that it is that class, and the redder, the more discouraged it is. So going to that first example, exactly the fact that there's pandanus and ikan bilis in there a little bit as well, and lemongrass really gives the algorithm a strong indication that this dish is Southeast Asian. And looking to the strawberry and mascarpone example, exactly the fact that there's sundae in the title and milk as an ingredient really give it a lot of confidence to say, okay, I'm going to go from frozen desserts and ice cream, even though there's mascarpone cheese in there, and for some example or some reason, it doesn't quite link mascarpone cheese to ice cream, which could make sense, could not make sense, but we continually follow up on these algorithms to see what the decisions are, why the decisions were taken, and if we need to steer it in the right direction a little bit. All right. The cool thing is, how do we use it? Well, we can gain a lot of insights from that. We have those tens of millions of recipes, we have those hundreds of millions of social media posts, and we now actually know what's in there, okay, right? So we can see, okay, how much is this used with that? How much is that used with this? What dish is it? Is it mainly Southeast Asian cuisine? Is it mainly Italian cuisine? But we can also use that to gain insights in flavor macro trends. There's a lot of stuff in there. What is flavor macro trends? Flavor macro trends is basically trying from like this large corpus of social media posts, these billions of social media posts, is trying to aggregate all the little tiny grains of sand you find spread in there and try to combine this in an aggregated way or in an aggregated view to see, okay, people are talking about kiwi, they're talking about passion fruit, they're talking about mango quite a bit. What does this mean? And trying to detect that that perhaps could mean that fruity or tropical aromas are on the rise. Just as we've added here, how do we do it? It's not actually that hard. So we have like 2 people here who talk about yogurt and granola, and one who talks about eggs and turkey bacon, who went camping apparently. So we at Foodpairing, we just saw how we can detect all of these various things in the social medias and the recipes. Now, the nice thing with food pairing is that because we have, probably Bernard mentioned this, the largest aroma database in the world, is that we can link all of those various ingredients to their aroma components. So we know that kiwi is so fruity, so citrusy, so roasted, so this and this and that. So we can have this nice aggregated view and see, okay, people are talking about all these different ingredients and mentioning all these different words. We can actually see what that means on a larger level. And because we have the timing aspect of that as well, the cool thing is that we can have a little graph of the intensity of mentions of the spicy aroma, for example, and a time aspect of that. So if you're talking about intensity and you're talking about time, you're talking about trend detection. So if we plot those two on axis, we can actually see, okay, yeah, for the last 3 months or 4 months, spicy flavors or roasted flavors are really on the rise, just as an example. So that's one possible way of extending the knowledge that we get from recipes and social media posts in a nice aggregated view. Because we're not that super wide on time, if you have any questions on this, there's a booth actually on that. So feel free to come talk to us afterwards. Okay, so the cool thing is we do this at scale. We do this for billions of posts. And yeah, so the cool thing is we have food pairing. We have this link to the aroma database, so we can have those insights linked to actual aromas. Just as an example, the cool thing is granularity as well, so we can slice and dice any way we want. So I, for example, checked how many Instagram posts there were in 2015 with a chocolate and a Game of Thrones reference in it, and one of those smileys, and apparently the answer is 6. So if you're really at the heart of that data, you can really slice and dice it any way you want and then obtain the actual insights that you need. How this gets presented is something Bernard will further address to you and give some nice examples about. Bernard?
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So how do we communicate trends to our clients? So one of the advantages when you can follow up all those trends is that you can also order them. And for example, what you've seen is that floral is one of the main trending aroma directions for the moment. It doesn't have to be only flavor. It can also be something like vegan or nostalgic, because we have a taxonomy which is much broader than only clustering on aroma. So we can order, and then we can decide, okay, for your application, what is the most relevant. So what do you get as an outcome is you get floral as an example, related trends. So it's not if something talks about floral, about what other trends do they also talk, what are emotional associations connected to floral. So apparently when it's spring or romantic, it's also linked to that. What scent character does it have? So it's more like delicate sweetness. Where do we see the manifestation in the market? Some examples on tea, on drinks. And then we give on focus some ingredients that represent floral trend. And then you see what the trend score is per ingredient. So for example, hibiscus and elderflower are really much trending, and we can also divide then per country how the trend score is evolving. For example, for elderflower is trending in UK, not surprised, also in France, a bit less in US. So that gives us insight per market on floral, how trending are certain ingredients. We can then extract images from Instagram, for example, to demonstrate what floral is about. And then we can give insight, for example, if you talk about chocolate. Okay, so elderflower is one of the trending ingredients. What is the match to chocolate? What is a novelty? So we can look into recipes or in social media and say, okay, elderflower and chocolate. For confectionery, it is novel. Desserts, it's a bit less. But you see a difference between recipes, which are a bit slower in adapting trends, versus social media. Because on social media, even for drinks, we see that already the novelty score is lower to 50%. So that means that people already post drinks with chocolate and elderflower online. Next to the combination of the elderflower and the chocolate, we also give directions of additional pairings that you can do. So you get insights on the best matches to your basic product, what the novelty score is, what is the category that you should focus on, which is most novel, if that's what your brand stands for, or just the opposite, and then what potential pairings you could add to elderflower and chocolate. So just as an example on how we communicate information on the trends. So, of course, this is not true because there's a sentence missing. Until now, when we talk about understand your consumer, it is mainly understanding the anticipated taste. So it's convincing the consumer to actually trial the product. But if you look at the whole life cycle of a product, it's not only the trial, it's also the taste that needs to be good. So we also need to have information about how good the taste match the target group. So we have to combine both to optimize the success, the CFI score. So for that, we use the flavor ID. As you already know, flavor is personal. And just to show one example, so we had when we developed our recommender, we started with two different types of recommendation. One, it's about collaborative filtering. That's like Amazon. If you like this book, you will also like the other book. The reason is because another person liked those books, and you like one of the books, so the second one you will also like. It would be like one person like apple and banana, you like apple, so you have to like banana. So that's collaborative filtering. On the other hand, we can zoom in the content and say, okay, you like banana and apple, you like this type of molecules, this descriptors, this co-occurrence of descriptors, so you will also like dragon fruit, say something. As you can guess, the accuracy of those predictions of this one is much better than the other one. So collaborative is about 60%, and that's not good for the recommenders that we want to build. But just looking at how other people like products, you don't get there. You only get there when you take really food as personal and zoom in the characteristics and try to understand why a person likes a certain food. So that's what's behind the flavor ID. And the flavor ID is also missing a missing item when you look at making new products. Because for now, personas are mainly like age and gender and location, but what is missing is like a flavor persona. If you really want to predict how good the products will go into the market, you need to know the flavor persona of your target group. So we can actually cluster from a group of consumers the flavor IDs into a few clusters. So imagine that we have a few thousand of flavor IDs. Then we can actually group that into 3 clusters. So ideally, we want to have a food specific for that one consumer, because that will give the best solution. But of course, that's not realistic. So the question is, and how can we cluster that into a group of flavor personas? And then we get insights on the cluster like, okay, this group likes very much citrus, but it has to co-occur with some other drivers of liking and in this type of combination. So that gives us the insight that we, again, can plug in into the model. So in the end, the CFI score is much more accurate. So that brings us at the end of the morning session. So where are we? So we already know that we have to understand your product, the chemistry and the pairings, that we need to understand the consumer, the trending, the flavor IDs, and that is then plugged in into the model, and that's something we will discuss this afternoon.